When Vladimir Putin visited Alaska, he didn't arrive quietly. He touched down in a $500 million fortress with gold-plated bathrooms, a private gym, and defenses fit for a war zone. This is Vlad Force One, the Kremlin's answer to the Air Force One. But what's it like inside? What top secret technology does it have? And what other aircraft fly with the leader of the biggest country in the world? Now, we don't know every secret inside, but thanks to leaked photos, a rare charity tour, and Russian state TV, we can piece together what it looks like, and today, we'll step inside. Let's do a deep dive into how Putin travels abroad and how this jet really is fit for a modern Tsar. The aircraft in question is the Ilyushin Il-96-300 PU, and the PU literally stands for Point of Control, and that's exactly what it is. It's essentially a flying version of the Kremlin, which is where the military might of Russia is ruled from. And yes, I know I said military might, and you're probably all typing away in the comments about the current conflicts in the world, but let's leave the comments about Ukraine till the end. Step inside Putin's flying fortress, and you'll notice immediately it's not a normal airliner. While the normal version of the Dash 300 has 262 seats and can fly up to 11,000 kilometers, enough to go from Moscow to many cities in North America, this version is very different. The VIP Il-96 is typically outfitted to fly farther than the standard version. With far fewer passengers than the airliner's 300-seat capacity, space is available for extra fuel or equipment. Yeltsin's original Il-96-300 PU had increased flight range compared to the civilian 96s. It can easily do transatlantic trips, and during testing of the original 96, a record of over 14,000 kilometers with fuel to spare was achieved, so you can guess that the President Edition can at least easily match these numbers. Unlike Air Force One, however, the 96 PU is not known to have in-flight refueling capability. We start at the cockpit, where Russia's best pilot sits surrounded by secure avionics. The normal plane has 2 pilots, but here there is a crew of 4. But even here, everything is reinforced electronically and made of hard switches, because it isn't just for flying, it's for protecting the president in case of nuclear war. EMPs would knock out normal aircraft's control systems. The crew here also have to go underneath medical screening every single time they fly. Behind it lies a long gold-trimmed corridor and a small reception area, the first hint of the neoclassical decor that runs throughout the jet. Sofas line the walls, tapestries hang from the bulkheads, and it feels more like a palace than a plane. Off the corridor is a private office and lounge with bookshelves, smaller tables, space for confidential talks away from the main boardroom. Regarded as Putin's office, it's also the area where he has intimate chats with reporters to appear more like a person of the people. Behind this is a main seating area where the room for staff to sit, press, security and more. This is a small cabin crew area to prepare for meals, and there's also a bar and social lounge with plush seating, a fully stocked bar and room for guests to unwind, although always under the eye of the security. At the end of the corridor comes the conference room, the nerve center of the aircraft. A massive oval table with a gold trim surrounded by cream leather chairs serves as Putin's airborne situation room. With encrypted comms running throughout the walls, this is where he can literally command Russia while cruising at 39,000 feet. Behind this door is the sensitive areas. Now, we don't have much information on what it would look like, but this would be the communication, nuclear control, planning, and so on and so forth would be, as well as the security offices. Naturally, I'm taking this all with a massive grain of salt because there's never been any photos taken of this area. Finally, at the rear is Putin's private quarters. Now, this is estimated, but based on the idea of privacy, it would be crazy for passengers or staff to wander through this section up front near the conference room, but it could be located there as well. This includes the presidential suite, a king-size bed, ornate wood finishes and soundproofing to turn this into Putin's airborne bedroom. Attached is the now famous bathroom, complete with a gold-plated sink and toilet, one of the most notorious luxury features on board. And keep walking, you'll also find the private gym, with treadmill, weights and an exercise bike. For a leader who cultivates the image of strength, this is no surprise. It reportedly cost $500 million to build, with interiors to match. The aircraft is 55 meters long and 60 meters wide, with the Dash 400 series being 63 by 60 meters. The presidential version of the Il-96 also has a couple of other interesting design tweaks as well. One example is that it features an integrated stairway in the lower fuselage. Normally an Il-96, unlike the older Il-86s, doesn't carry its own stairs, relying on airport jet bridges and trucks. But after the infamous incident in 1959 when Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev arrived in the US on a Tu-114 and the airport stairs were too short for the giant plane, it forced him to use a fire truck ladder to disembark in a rather undignified manner. The Russians took note. And thanks to its 4 engines, the Il-96 can be extraordinarily forgiving of its engine failures. In fact, Russian pilots boast that even if 2 engines fail, the plane can still continue to fly, maneuver, and even climb or safely land on the remaining 2. In a pinch, it could fly on 1 engine for some distance up to 800 kilometers, according to one general, and reach a safe airport. The Il-96 also features a medical compartment on board, essentially a mini clinic. It includes an area that can serve as an extensive care unit with a resuscitation equipment and emergency medical supplies. A doctor is usually part of the crew. This medical suite also means that in case of any health issues, from minor illness to a serious emergency, immediate treatment can be administered. And the plane can even handle something like an emergency surgery if it absolutely had to. This capability is a standard feature on modern VIP jets, and Air Force One has an operating table and a supply of the president's blood type, for example, and the Russian plane is similarly equipped to safeguard its principal. Putin's 96 also has a special coating on the fuselage to make it less visible to radar. This absolutely makes no sense. It's a massive airliner with a massive radar cross-section. There's no way you can lower the radar cross-section of such a plane significantly enough with simple paint. Sure, it can avoid detection with only jamming, or even better, flying with another EW aircraft, but paint is not going to do it, so I don't know what the Russians are reporting about. And boy, we need to talk about countermeasures. The Il-96-300 is equipped with an electronic countermeasure suite rivaling that of a military aircraft. Reportedly, it has the Videbsk defense system named President S for export, which is also better fitting for our story. This system can detect incoming missiles and automatically deploy countermeasures. President S is also a multi-layered modular system consisting of both passive and active measures that can defeat an incoming missile, and it's usually mounted on helicopters or the Su-25 attack aircraft, so to see it on the president's plane is quite an achievement. It has a L-150 radar warning receiver and several UV and laser warning sensors. They also provide the main computer with information about incoming threats in 360 degrees. After the threat has been identified, the system chooses whether it is going to use the active jamming against the radar-guided missiles, or DIRCM, and flares against infrared-guided missiles. The aircraft can feature the active towed decoy as well, which is flying some 150 meters behind the aircraft and reflecting radar waves to lure the missile away from the aircraft. If push comes to shove, rumors from Yeltsin's era mentioned an escape system with a parachute or maybe even an escape pod for the president or the top brass. However, this has never been confirmed and remains a rumor. Speaking of the communications, the exact specifications are classified, but we do know that the equipment is robustly backed up. Every piece of comms gear has at least one backup, and some have 2 or 3 layers of redundancy. And having 2 or 3 layers of redundancy is going to come back in a big and expensive way in a minute, so stay tuned. Externally, one giveaway of this high-tech flying command post role is the presence of a large satellite communication flaring on the upper fuselage. That's that long pole that seems to be running all the way down the spine. But the security doesn't stop there, because Putin also has a fleet of 4 identical jets. That's right, there's 4 of these. 3 serve as decoys, while up to 68 fighter escorts can surround him in the air as he flies across Russia or across the ocean. 68 fighter escorts? Come on, Russia. This makes no sense. Why exactly 68? And imagine 68 planes flying in formation around the aircraft. That's a nightmare for everyone involved. In reality, it's usually 2 pairs of fighters that will escort the plane. Like we saw on his recent trip to Alaska, he was actually escorted by 2 F-35s. No one really knows which plane he's really in until it takes off and comes into land at the foreign airport, which is something we saw in Alaska, which I'll get to in a minute. But the most fascinating aspect of the Russian president's visit to Alaska is the fact that it wasn't just one jet, but multiple different types, a whole fleet. Birds of a feather flock together, so to speak. In the last 48 hours, Alaskans witnessed something that has become rare since the Cold War: the Russian government aircraft touching down on US soil. On Thursday, at least 3 of the Ilyushin IL-96-300 wide-bodies crossed the Pacific and landed at the Ted Stevenson's International Airport in Anchorage. One aircraft, RA-96018, remained on the tarmac, while the other two, 96019 and 96023, turned back west, landing back in Russia just hours later. These were the decoys. Another reason for having several presidential planes is simply to have a spare in case of any technical issues. This practice of having a spare aircraft is not unique to Russia, the US does it as well, but Russia formalized the rule after an incident in the 1970s when 2 backups turned out to be necessary. Legend has it that during a visit by US President Nixon, Soviet leader Brezhnev wanted to show off his Il-62. They boarded, but one of the Il-62's engines refused to start. Everyone shifted to the backup Il-62, and then that plane had a technical glitch as well, forcing a further delay. After that, the rule became always have at least 2 backups for a head-of-state flight. The following day, the operation grew stranger. A heavy 96 MD transport jet, 78838, lined up for Anchorage but aborted its landing. Minutes later, it vanished from civilian radar, diverting to an Air Force base just across town. The Il-76 is Russia's workhorse hauler. It's built for cargo vehicles and sometimes security convoys. Its presence in Alaska almost certainly meant one thing: delivering logistics and equipment to support the president's visit. We also saw another transport plane arrive before his visit with additional security staff to help secure the ground. And these displays aren't just logistics, it's also a reminder how Putin travels. He's never alone and it's never predictable. Multiple president jets launched together, some peel away as decoys, and military transports shadowed the operation. Sometimes also Russia uses the two Tu-14SR Doomsday command posts, or Tu-204 business jets for communications, relay and staff, but for this trip it appears to only have been that one presidential squadron, plus a heavy lifter. All of this came ahead of a tense summit with Donald Trump, set against the backdrop of the war in Ukraine and the deeply symbolic setting Alaska, which, if you're up to date on your history, it used to be owned by Russia and then was sold to the United States, and decades a front line of Cold War tensions. Today, only 18 of the 96-300s remain in service worldwide, with 11 active airframes assigned to the Russian government. It was born in the twilight years of the Soviet Union, and the Il-96 was Moscow's answer to the long-haul giants of Airbus and Boeing, an ambitious 4-engine wide-body meant to project Soviet engineering onto the world stage. Unfortunately, that dream never materialized. The jet found little success outside of Russia, overshadowed by the more efficient Western designs with twin engines, yet its presence in Anchorage was a fleeting echo of another aviation era, the Cold War skies of the 1980s and 1990s. So for plane spotters and AV geeks alike, seeing a Russian 4-engine widebody touch down in Alaska in 2025 is a gift. In an age dominated by efficient twin-engine workhorses, the 96 still has the power to surprise, even if it isn't for the best occasion. So when Putin comes and goes from Alaska, he won't just be stepping onto foreign soil, he'll be arriving in a flying Kremlin, complete with its own palace, gym, and command bunker. Part symbol, part fortress, and a reminder that power doesn't just sit in the Kremlin, it flies. Hey, Nick here, just a little end of the video. Naturally, this is a very contentious topic, especially with the war in Ukraine, and I'd just like to remind everybody that this channel is about the love of engineering. I understand that we can be on different sides of many different issues all around the world, and of course, many of aircraft are designed for military uses, so we do need to consider that when we talk about them, especially when they carry weapons that could harm civilians. But in this story, I really do want to stress that this is just a look at how someone's modified an amazing feat of engineering into a presidential aircraft, and I hope that peace will soon quickly follow for all of the conflicts around the world. Thanks for watching.